Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another live episode with Lynn Acton. She'll be connecting here soon. And this month's topic is, do horses bond with us? Now, before, I'm sure most of you are saying, well, duh, of course they do, Jack. But my interest in this topic is twofold. One, I just read a terrific book by Lynn and I share a publisher, Trafalgar Square Publishing, and they just published a terrific book by Mary Ann Simons, who I had on the podcast last week. The book is called A Horse by Nature. But she just, there was such a huge common thread, and no matter what we're talking about with the horse's physiology, its mental well-being, its trainability, there was a common thread on having good relationships. I don't use that in an anthropomorphic way, but a horse being able to socialize, and we are part of that herd. We're part of that equation. So it was front of mind for that reason. And then also, I wanted to explore this topic because I've encountered, and maybe Lynn can chime in a second if she's encountered the same thing, but I've encountered many students saying they need to hit pause on their normal training or maybe their own riding instruction because they need to kind of work on their relationship with their horse. And I think what's interesting about that is I don't think there's a particular method per se for bonding with horses. I don't think anybody owns the corner on that market. I think we can educate ourselves, but I don't think, in my world, it's part of what we're doing with our horses every day. It is part of training and riding. So I want to make sure we don't lose sight of that. So it looks like Lynn is connected. Hey,
I'm
Lynn.
here.
Hi.
Hello.
Good to see you. Um,
Do.
it's such a meaty topic, so we'll probably just jump right in. I was just introducing why I wanted to chat about it. And do you have initial thoughts before we launch into things here?
Oh, exactly what you said. There's no method of bonding with horses. It needs to be part of the way that we interact with them all the time. It's not like exercises we can do separately. And it really has all to do with horses' emotions. Horses naturally want to bond. People ask, can horses really bond with us? Well, they crave bonds. They're social animals. They're in a natural herd, they survive by having those social connections because they survive on cooperation. So those bonds are essential for survival, for security, and in domestic settings, they're essential for good welfare. And
Mhm.
horses are always trying to bond with us. They want to bond. Many ways, people push them away. And sometimes they're pushing them away when they think that they are training. So if can we do some screen sharing here? Do you have
Yeah,
that enabled?
it
Let's see
should
if
be
that works.
enabled. Go ahead and give it a try. Are you getting the position?
Okay. Yep. And I got share here. And oops, I hit the wrong thing. Sorry, I'll be right back. Can you go back here?
No problem.
Okay. I'm gonna say stop share. Now, am I still enabled?
Yes, should be.
Okay, screen share. Now I have to pick the screen.
Well, and I'm really glad you're talking about this because it's so nuanced. It's so simple, but it's so nuanced because not pushing the horse away doesn't therefore mean that we're welcoming them to nuzzle in our pockets and step on our feet and kind of blur the boundaries in terms of who's making the decisions in this moment. So I'm glad you're going to head down this road. Okay,
Yes.
photos.
So, but can you see the photo?
Yep, we've got the little cute little
Okay.
Chincoteague ponies there.
Yeah, yes, we do. And really this is just a normal sort of feral band. And notice how close they all are. There's a lot of social connections amongst them and interconnections. Um, and part of bonding is the behaviors we see. We see the behaviors like the greeting. And here Brandy has left off grazing to come over and greet me. Mutual grooming. And then, Jack, why don't you tell us about this photo? Because clearly this horse is comfortably reaching out for your touch.
So sweet. Well, it kind of ties in with the two photos or the photo with the Chincoteague ponies that you showed because the more I see the value firsthand in a well socialized horse, the more I try to kind of see myself as part of their herd. And, if you have ample time to go sit out in the pasture and observe your horse, that's a wonderful thing to do. But many of us are busy or don't have that luxury. So, one of the ways I try to integrate myself into this process is I'll commonly let a horse loose in the arena while I'm riding. And this little guy had decided to go sunbathe while I galloped and cantered around him. And then, it looked like he wanted to engage with me when I dismounted from my horse Diamante. And instead of kind of leaving the arena, which was my plan, I thought he was trying to just sort of say hi. And so I went over and I didn't want to scare him, but as you can see, he was very comfortable. He just wanted to kind of say hi and connect. And so I'm trying to take more moments like that to be a little bit more horse-like in my while I'm going about my training per se.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, and that's really a beautiful photo because he is showing his real comfort with you and his intention to engage with you, the reaching out to
Yeah.
engage with you. He could have just ignored you, and he did not. Um, and another thing that we see in as part of bonding is protectiveness. So we have a foal here and they're roaming around, but I notice her band is around her, not just mama, but also the aunties and the fathers in the background there. Um, but one thing that I noticed about all these things that we see as bonding is personal space is involved.
Yeah.
These are all happening. That horse was in your personal space. You were in his space. Um, and people actually spend a lot of time in the name of training. They spend a lot of time in anti-bonding behaviors. Anti-bonding behaviors like, you're not allowed to be in my space. You're too close. That's you're trying to dominate me. You're not allowed to be in my space. Even when the horses come into your space gently, and as you said earlier, we make a distinction between whether the horse has been gentle or not in coming into your space. Yet at the same time, a horse might come into your space rather abruptly or roughly because he's scared and he's looking to you for assistance, guidance, protection. And that says he's already thinking of you as having a bond with him. He wants to have that that protection from you, and that's part of the bond. So when people push the horse away, they're saying to the horse, I don't want the bond. Get away from me.
Mhm.
So, and that's often taught in the name of training. Don't let your horse get too close to you. Don't let him push you. Don't let him be in your face.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of behaviors are misinterpreted. A lot of behaviors that are bonding related behaviors are misinterpreted. I've got a whole chapter on that in my book, What Horses Really Want. There's a whole chapter on behaviors that say your horse is trying to be your partner, wants to have a bond, and most people don't recognize that these are really positive behaviors.
Yeah, can
And
you say a little bit more about just the coming close to you? I mean, my mind goes immediately to like a young or green horse, but I mean, certainly that's not always the case, but that tendency to get close to you, not run you over, but like I see it a lot when people teach a horse to lunge, for example. If the horse gets confused or startled, they cut in towards the handler and try to stand with the handler. And people get very frustrated and go, no, 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 go out there. I'm trying to teach you how to lunge. But obviously what we're talking about there is different than a horse like coming in towards you and then chewing on your pockets looking for a treat or something. It's that behavior, I think, unless I'm misspeaking, of coming and standing just near you.
um, yeah, it's when a horse who's been maybe allowed to be too pushy with people or given a lot of treats may get pushy and like I'm demanding of, well, I want to play with you now, or I want to get treats from you now. But then there's also the I'm confused and could you please help me out here?
Mhm.
And so that may be some of what we see when in the lunging situation you describe, like, well, I'm confused. So let me just come hang out here, hoping that I'm going to feel safer next to you. And then, of course, the horse gets pushed away. No, we want you out there. And so it's not, then that's another one of those anti-bonding behaviors.
That's
And
then I suppose the horse could learn the skill you're teaching, which in this case I'm just using lunging because it's an example, but and it could become obedient about what you want done, which is certainly and never put a foot wrong, but that's certainly not the same as having a bond.
Right. Yeah, obedience is completely different than bonding. Turn back on. Yeah, that's getting compliance through pressure. And that has nothing to do with bonding. That's just the horse is going to comply because he doesn't really want to argue with you, because it's not in their nature to argue. It's more in their nature to be cooperative. That's part of being part of a social group, is you go along with what the group's doing. And another anti-bonding behavior is training horses solely with negative reinforcement. There's been studies of what happens if you train a horse with only negative reinforcement. Usually the result is the horse does not want to be with people. We can't dispense with it, but it needs to be part of training, but it shouldn't be the whole thing. And I've noticed that the people who most promote the anti-bonding behaviors, the ones who say, keep the horse away from you, are the people who say that horses don't bond in the first place. And they put down the people who recognize the bonds. So what we have then is pretty much a self-fulfilling prophecy. We say horses don't bond, so we treat them as in a way that they can't or don't want to, and then we say they can't.
Yeah, you could see where that loop would happen. Yep.
Yeah. So, but there's more to bonding than the personal space. The real bottom line is that horses bond with us when they feel comfortable with us. They're always looking for friends, companions, somebody to feel safe with. And so they look for that. They look for people who make them feel safe and comfortable. And people who make them feel unsafe or uncomfortable, they don't want to be around. So if we look at the emotions, and this is the point that that a lot of people miss, is that everything has underlying emotions. This diagram, and I don't know how many people have seen this before, this is called a core effects diagram. Don't worry about the title of it. It shows us the horse's core emotions. Horses have 7 core emotions. Those are defined by the subjective feeling. I shouldn't say horses, all mammals. All mammals have 7 core emotions, and these are defined as the subjective feeling plus the behavior plus the location in the brain that that emotion originates and the associated brain chemicals. So these are pretty well defined scientifically. And there's 7 of them, 4 positive and 3 negative. And mostly we hope that lust is not going to be one of the emotions we have to deal with when we're working with our horses or training, because we want them to be either not having any sexual encounters or doing it on their own time. So what we want to focus on is play, curiosity or seeking, and the bond. And we can incorporate play and curiosity into our daily interactions with the horses. And that comes back to what you were saying earlier on Jack, that that bonding isn't a separate exercise. It's something that we want to incorporate into everything we do with the horses. So if we look at the emotions individually here, play, let's see, we'll start with care. Care is the is safety and protection. It starts with a nurturing mother, and then it moves, and that's where foals first learn their ability to interact and socialize with other individuals. So we see that here. We've got some foals who are with their mothers and one auntie. So they have lots of opportunities to socialize and establish that ability to get along socially. The next core emotion is play. And play is not defined by the activity, it's defined by the emotion of joy or pleasure. So, Jack, I see you laughing, you and your friend laughing here. So, do you want to tell us what the occasion was?
That was just a birthday trail ride up in the redwoods. It's funny because there's not a redwood tree in the photo, unfortunately. But and those are my two horses, and yeah, it was just a kind of a funny moment. My friend was like, "Oh, do you want me to take your pictures?" And we were like, "Sure." I mean, we were just having a great time, and I like this photo because the horses are so relaxed, and Corazon looks like he's posing as always. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was just a wonderful reminder too that these two horses are they're both pretty big personalities, but that they do enjoy being this close together, and nobody's screwing around, and because that's the way I was raised, is like, don't let the horses touch, or don't let them get too close, or and like I say, now what I know about socializing horses, it's like the opposite. You want them to be happy and cozy being this close, and touching each other, and the rider being able to lean a little off balance and not getting freaked out. So
Yes. And of course, our emotions are infectious. So with you and your friends smiling and laughing, that's conveyed to the horses too. So
mhm,
here we have a very positive atmosphere.
yeah, yeah.
And play can also be initiated by the horse. We have one here. Bronze was supposed to be doing an agility course, and the idea was he was supposed to stand with his two front feet in the hoop. But he doesn't like to stand with his feet in hoops, so he came up with an alternative idea, and he just picked the hoop up, and in the process happened to have one front leg still through it when he picked it up. So he initiated this as play. Now, if I had corrected him, I would have squelched all the play. So instead, I just laughed and said, "Okay, I guess we're having a do-over on this course if we're going to submit it for score." But it 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 was clearly from his mind kind of a joke. And this is also play. We have Brandy with her purple sparkle hose and two of my granddaughters, and they've just been playing together in the arena. And part of this is they're also copying what the Brandy's copying what the girls are doing and taking a bow. And um, this is also comes under the heading of copying or social learning, a great way to teach horses to do some of the things we'd like them to do, because they're demonstrated rather than using pressure to ask her to lower her head. And the third positive emotion that we like to elicit when we're working with horses is seeking or curiosity. This is Sapphire, who was 34 years old when this picture was taken. And you can see she's still curious. What's this funny little bear doing sitting on a chair, wearing a funny hat in my arena where we don't usually see such bizarre things?
Huh. Wow. Yeah, that's neat to see.
And again, curiosity. Bronze thinks he might need to be worried about that tractor tire. So we're in the process of investigating it. I'm standing on it. As the leader, I go first. I'm standing on it to show I'm not worried about this. So when you're ready, you can come on and check this out. So all of these three emotions, the care and curiosity and play, all have positive brain chemicals associated with them. So that makes them inherently rewarding. So we don't need to apply additional rewards. We can, but we don't always need things like treats or petting or scratching in order to tell the horse that this is a good thing. He feels those positive emotions when he's with us, and the more we're associated with positive emotions, the stronger the bond is likely to be.
Can we pause for a second? I have I guess maybe it's a question. I have a question about the care, because I sometimes I hear people use that term, they'll say, well, so and so takes great care of her horses. And generally what they're meaning in those cases are the person frequently gets a body worker to come out and work on the horses, and maybe the person buys new blankets when the blanket is ripped, and there's a lot of outsourcing of services, if you know what I mean. Um,
Mhm.
but it a lot of times can be an owner that actually doesn't do a lot of activities or sort of these play investigative behavior type activities with their horses. But I hear that term, oh, she takes good care of her horse, used in instances where, well, she has the most expensive farrier and she feeds supplements. Do you know what I mean? Like, so could we flesh that
Yes.
out a little bit, that word care?
That's a really important point. In that context, care to me says physical care. And of course, that's important, but it's not the same thing as what the horse feels. Care as an emotion means the horse is feeling safe with the person,
Hmm.
safe, protected, probably protective because it tends to be a mutual feeling. So, from a horse's point of view, care is more related to wanting to be with you and feeling safe with you, trusting you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a important distinction, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, the distinction between the emotion the horse feels and the physical things that the person offers to the horse.
Hmm.
And horses, like other animals, generally don't perceive neglect as a form of abuse. It's not like, well, my owner's not getting me a chiropractor, and she doesn't have the best farrier, and she doesn't, she didn't get me the vet when I didn't feel good. Horses don't recognize that. What they recognize is, do they feel safe with you?
Yeah, right, right.
And it's that feeling of safety that they're looking for.
Okay.
And they want to feel like they're trusting. They want to trust people. Um, and the trust comes from from feeling safe. So one of the questions that we had was, is a bond necessary for positive training?
Mhm.
And I don't know that it is in the sense of having a strong positive connection with somebody that like develops over time, but but trust is necessary. I think in order to have positive training, we need to have the horse needs to have a level of trust. There's been a couple of interesting studies on that. Um, one said that horses who have attachments to their trainers learn better,
Mm.
um, and are calmer. calmer. Um, Another one said that if you take if you train horses in two different ways, and they used what they called traditional training or conventional training, which I think they mean mainly pressure and release, and compared that to training that was oriented toward noticing the horse's feelings, their emotions, and interacting with them more on an emotional level. And at the end of the training period, the two groups of horses had exactly the same skills. But the horses who had been trained with attention to their emotional state were less stressed.
Mm.
And a
Okay.
horse who's less stressed, of course, is going to be more reliable,
Mhm.
more enthusiastic about being with you and doing his job, and physically healthier too.
Yeah, I was going to say, and fewer health problems, I would hope. Yeah.
Right, right. So if we look at this as a positive training thing, one thing I saw right away was, okay, your posture's relaxed. Both of the horses look relaxed. Um, so you want to tell us about this, what was happening here?
Yeah, I think for, kind of trying to nurture that sense of trust and safety in me as a trainer. Like I say, I've been trying to be a little bit more part of the herd, so to speak. And the horse on the left is a baby. I think he was 2 in that photo. So I've wanted to start doing things with him, but again, not lunging because that's not great for his joints. And um
Mhm.
and he doesn't yet know how to ground drive. So I'm a big fan of ponying horses because I do think they enjoy being together. And it also keeps me part of the herd. And it gives the horse you're ponying such a nice energy and enthusiasm, I find. And they can cultivate curiosity, but there's always that mature horse in front to help them navigate when the neighbor's dogs run up to the fence and scare us, or the tractor backfires, or whatever happens. And I find that it's such a efficient, successful way to help these young horses develop. And I'm right there for the process, but so is their herd mate. And I just find that they transfer beautifully to the trainer from there.
Well, it makes so much sense. And this does create a really positive emotional situation for the horse because he's got the security of the other horse. The other horse is also modeling, as you said, modeling how to relate to the environment, but also modeling his confidence and trust in you.
Mhm.
And then the young horse is learning from the other horse. So he's able to learn by observing, by copying the other horse, a lot of things that otherwise might need to be taught by negative reinforcement. So you're using this social learning, which is inherently reinforcing for the horse.
Yeah, I've
So,
become a big fan of that. Yeah.
and I have a friend who has taken in a lot of traumatized horses. And she says, I give them a job. She says, that's the best way to get them to bond to me. I give them a job. But when she says give them a job, what she means is one baby step at a time as she's teaching them so that they have a positive interaction with her because she shows them what she wants them to do. When they do it, then they recognize that they've done well. Um, one step at a time, never pushing them. And here's something really important to think about is when you're working with a horse, watch those calming signals. We did a chat on calming signals a while back. And I think that was, last I looked, that was by far our most popular chat, probably because calming signals are so important. Calming signals are what horses are the body language that horses use when they're saying, I'm getting anxious here and we need to diffuse this situation. A calming signal shows that a horse is getting into the left side of that core effect space diagram, where they're feeling the anxiety, and they want to diffuse that. So if you were watching that as you're training, you never let the horse get into a level of anxiety that's a problem. And so what you end up with then is like here, these are a couple of ponies that she trained and who are very enthusiastic about their jobs. And they reliably go pretty much anywhere she wants them to go, and in fact just won their division in a big show. But never because her pressure is we need to accomplish something. It's always I want what we do to be a good experience for my ponies.
Hmm.
So when we're thinking always of making something a good experience for our horses, then they're actually learning faster, bonding better, and we accomplish more than when the focus is on what we expect them to learn or do.
Okay. Very neat. I love that picture.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we had come in was why does it take some horses longer to bond with a new owner than
Mhm.
it does others? And one of the oops one of the factors, of course, is the horse's personality. Another big factor is um, how they were raised. And these are the same foals that were in the first photo. They have been accustomed to being around people and seeing people as positive. They feel they're trusting with people. They just assume if people show up, nice things will happen. And if your horse has been raised that way, then you have a higher probability of being able to bond with him more easily.
I think too, if listeners haven't seen the chat we did on weaning, that was a very important one. And I
Mhm.
think it must tie into this issue, horses that are not positively socialized with other horses. I think that definitely translates also to just human connection and trainability.
Yeah, it does, because the emotions that the young horses have, especially during that sensitive socialization period, those emotions actually impact the hardwiring of their brain as they grow up. And so if they have experienced a lot of stress and trauma, then they don't have the resilience or the ability to connect that a horse does who has grown up with in a more positive situation. And another factor in the, I couldn't resist a picture of my bronze there, and that's Sapphire behind him, Jerry's first horse.
Okay.
The way that we acquired those two horses, I think, made a huge difference in our bond. When Sapphire came to us, she was very attached to the teenage girl who'd trained her, and she seemed to think that she was going to be with her forever. And when the girl brought her to us and left her with us, Sapphire was stunned. She galloped to the when she saw her trailer leaving, she galloped to the edge of the pasture where we'd turned her out and just screamed and screamed that heartrending, "Don't leave me, Winnie."
Wow.
So if you have a horse who has had a big loss, a person or other horses or a home that they were very connected to, then you can expect some grieving period and potentially some distrust of, well, I trusted before, I connected before, and I got the rug yanked out from under me, got kidnapped and dumped in another place. So I'm not sure I'm going to trust anybody again. And it took Sapphire a while to decide that she could trust us. Bronze, on the other hand, grew up with somebody who was a very good leader, a good protector leader, but he had 18 other horses, and Bronze knew he was just one of the gang. I showed up, and Bronze had my full attention, and he liked that.
Mhm.
And I spent a year with him living there, so we took, so he had time to really connect with me. And then when he came to live at the boarding stable where we had Sapphire, um, he connected with her right away. And so he settled in very well because he had that connection with me before he came. And Brandy, I think, was just flat out relieved. She was looking and looking clearly for somebody she felt she could trust. And she decided I was it. And so I don't think she ever looked back. And Jack, I've done a lot of talking, so I think I want to know where
Well,
what you have.
no, it's great. I wanted to get through all the slides, and it's kind of perfect because Zoom is telling us we have like 6.5 minutes left. But I did want to tack on here, Lynn, because it seems simple, but on this last point of why some horses might take longer than others, I don't want to gloss over the value of just consistency. And I know that seems simple, but I think a lot of times a horse will bond with a trainer because we're paid to show up every day and be with the horse and work with the horse. And in a lot of cases, we're also feeding the horse and taking care of the horse in some ways. Whereas maybe the owner only is able to come out on weekends or couple times a week, and that is different. I mean, there is such value in just showing up. And again, it comes back to there's no particular method for forming a bond, like regardless of what some people will have in their marketing, like nobody owns the corner on this, but just showing up consistently day after day or how often as you can. I know we all have limited schedules, but that alone, I think, does wonders, honestly, beyond what kind of fancy tricks and exercises you're bringing to the table. It's showing up with yourself, your same energy every day, and the horse starts to really trust that and open up. But I also did want to remind listeners, way back, we did a chat on horses that are shut down. And I think those horses are especially tricky to feel like you have a bond with, because, these are the types of horses that they never really maybe misbehave. Like, anybody could ride them. I mean, truly anybody could get on a ride. They're not going to buck or be naughty, quote unquote. But it's almost like the lights aren't on. When you go to swing a leg over the horse and they're just standing there at the mounting stool like a lump of marble. Like, they don't look at you, they don't engage with you. And those horses to me are challenging because they're so robotic. Maybe they've had a bunch of different owners, and that's the reason. Maybe they've had kind of a hard training hand, don't step out of line kind of program. Um, or maybe they just haven't have the opportunity to connect with a handler. But that was a worthwhile chat. That was maybe 2 years ago at this point. We did a conversation on reaching the shutdown horse, but that's also on the YouTube channel. Um, so as we wrap up, I'm just going to make sure no other questions came in here. Oh, wait, we do have a question from Melissa. In a therapy or lesson environment, what are some ways we can teach our students pro bonding behavior for our horses? So maybe we'll stick with a lesson. In a lesson program, how can we foster this idea of not having anti-bonding behaviors?
Well, I think the very first thing is to encourage them to look at the horse with empathy. At the beginning of a lesson, I like to ask a student, how's your horse feeling today? What sort of mood is he in? And interestingly, beginners, novices seem to have very intelligent, insightful responses to that. Whereas people who have a lot of equestrian training often respond in terms of how obedient the horse is being that day or how well he's moving. So I think one thing is to encourage people to just think about how is the horse feeling. Often our intuition is very accurate on that. And the other is to teach specifically handling skills like leading horses with your body language. Your body language around a horse is very important because they're reading way more intricate things than we realize we're sending them. So I think that's the tangible thing that you can teach students is to read the horse's body language and use your body language in ways that that make sense to the horse and that are unthreatening and actually engaging and inviting the horse to stay with you. Don't teach people to round pen horses and send them away. Teach them to walk in a way that invites the horse to copy and stay with them.
Yeah, I think building on that, similarly, one thing they can do, I think, is to occasionally not show up and have the horse tacked up in a lesson program to go collect the horse from the stall or pasture, wherever it is. I remember, and I grew up in a horse training family, but I knew how to march out to the field and put a halter on a horse and bring it in. But I went to study with a horsemanship trainer in Hawaii decades ago at this point. But I remember I went to round up a couple of horses she told me to get. And boy, she lit into me later. She goes, "You don't just march up there and put their halter on." She goes, "You didn't wait for that horse to welcome you into its space." And I was like, "What?" And I was raised around horses. I was like, "What do you mean? You want to catch horses?" But it really left an impression on me. I was like, "What are you even talking about?" But I think that's really valuable. You start right off from the first second waiting for that horse to acknowledge you, and you do assess kind of what state they're in. They look a little grouchy, a little sore, a little tucked up, maybe they're dehydrated. You learn to make those assessments. Like when you walk up to your car and you're like, is the tire flat? Is the windshield wiper stuck up, in the wrong position? That kind of thing. And then slowly putting the halter on the horse. I think that's where it starts. And I think that's really valuable for lesson takers to do when it can happen.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much so.
Well, Zoom's going to cut us off, but thank you as always, Lynn. Any recommendations for future topics, drop them into the chat below. We love hearing from you all, and we will catch you next time. I think we're going to talk about investigative behavior. Is that right, Lynn?
We can. That'll be fine.
Well, stay tuned. We'll announce it. All right. All right. Take care, Lynn. Catch you in a future one.
So long.